Hey everyone, just we'll give a few seconds here for everybody to get logged on and settled in. If you need to get water or anything, go ahead and get it now. Just a reminder that this training is going to last about an hour. So if you need to stretch your legs or anything, do it now, but please try to remain present during the training since it's not going to last too long. Also a reminder, if you've done one of these trainings before, we're going to keep everybody muted during the training just to make it easier on ourselves. If you have any questions though, feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll have Q&A at the very end. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jillian Hawkins. I'm the Assistant Executive Director here at the Illinois Democratic County Chairs Association. And welcome to another installment of our 2020 virtual training series. We're joined here tonight by Paul Kendrick, who is the Executive Director of Rust Belt Rising. Rust Belt Rising is a nonprofit organization that provides training and messaging on foundational economic issues for candidates and party leaders in the Midwest. He is an alumni of the 2018 JB Pritzker for Governor campaign. And has also previously worked as the Director of Coalition and Grassroots Engagement for Opportunity Nation and on President Obama's 2012 reelection campaign in Wisconsin as the Youth Vote Director. He also previously worked in the Obama White House. We're very glad that he's here tonight to share his expertise and share with us a little bit about what Rust Belt Rising does. So without further ado, I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Paul.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jillian, for having me. Thank you, Dan and Christina, as always, for their leadership. Thank you to each of you for what you do. County chairs are my heroes. Cycles, one after another. You're the ones that are always there, making sure, candidates may come and go, but like you're helping them, you're developing them. You're just making sure volunteers have a list to call and the lawn signs get out, and it's hard work, and you don't always get appreciated, and so just know you are appreciated. Thank you. You're the backbone of the Democratic Party, and it was such a pleasure for me to meet a lot of you in Springfield a few months back when we could still be in person together. I guess it was very cold then, so I guess I forget what month that was, but I think it was definitely winter time. And it was really wonderful talking with you then. And so I want to give you something new today, but it'll draw on themes that if you didn't meet me then, the themes will be worked into what we're talking about. But we just got a new poll back of the Midwest. So what I want to do tonight is really share with you what we're seeing about people's priorities and their challenges and how they are looking at different issues that can hopefully inform your outreach. And then I want to talk about some messages that you can use in how we as Democrats talk about these things. So I hope that'll be really helpful to you in this critical moment with, 70 days to go or so until the election. So, but again, Rust Belt Rising, we are working with a network of leaders in the Midwest who want to create change in their communities to help families thrive. And these are Democratic leaders running for all levels of office, from local office, county office, to state office, to Congress. And we have over 150 leaders we're working with who are on the ballot this year. We have more than 300 that receive our messaging and polling. At the end of this, I'll drop the sign up in the chat if you want to be always in the loop with the different learning sessions we do, because we do sessions like this for leaders. We put out messaging that they can use, and we work with candidates in Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. And again, not just candidates, but also leaders like you, because what we're most interested in is ultimately, how do we talk about who we are as Democrats? How do we help? We've all knocked on that door, and we probably all knocked on a lot of them in 2016, where someone said, I don't know if Democrats really know what's going on with me. I don't know if they know what's going on in my life. And we want to, and I don't think that's fair. You know, we've been fighting the good fight for a long time, but you know, it's just the reality. And so we want to help Democratic candidates be able to talk effectively about what we're going to do for people's families, why we are the party of working families, to ultimately win elections and deliver on that change. So especially in parts of our region that, you know, can be struggling, can feel a little bit left behind, that they're really able to have the economic vitality that we know so many of our candidates and you all have a vision for what can happen in your community, but how do we get that vision out there and connect with voters so that we can ultimately deliver on that vision? So the poll I'm going to talk you through is of 2,639 voters. And, you know, I will note this, so they are not Illinois voters, but because, you know, close to the presidential election, obviously there's a great deal of interest in the presidential battlegrounds as we all try to take the White House back. And, but we do think it creates a snapshot of Midwesterners that, you know, with our neighbors on either side, with the Michigan folks, with the Wisconsin folks, I think it tells us a lot about Illinois voters and, you know, with some of the different Illinois congressional candidates and other kind of political stakeholders. They use the poll because, again, it's something that's telling us about kind of culturally our region and where people are. So the first thing I wanted to show you with this is, well, we asked people, what's the most important factor for your vote in November? What's the most important issue to you? There's so many issues we can talk about as Democrats. What's the most important one? And what people said was how economic policies impact your pocketbook, personal values, handling of COVID. And then next was healthcare. Usually healthcare is higher. Healthcare always is important for Democrats. We should never stop talking about healthcare. There's a lot of change that's needed there so people can get the care they need. But it's really interesting that I think obviously COVID looms over so much. It affects our health, our safety, our economy, local economies. And so I think that is really dominating people's thinking right now. And so having a plan for that is very important. Our values as voters, as people are very important. And it's important for us as Democrats to explain the things that we want to do through the values our voters have. And if we're trying to persuade someone who maybe is kind of moderately on the other side, we need to think about what values resonate for them and then explain our policy through their values. Because if we do it through just ones that resonate with us, well, then nothing changes. And then how economic policies impact your pocketbook. And so that's really important. And I don't know if as Democrats we do this quite as much as we should, that we really have to explain the benefits of our policy. What we often do is we explain the features of our policy. We say, you know, so first, like this will happen, and then there'll be a committee, and then you know, we'll pass this out of this, and the policy, the funding structure is designed in this way. That isn't telling a struggling working parent what's going to be different, and she may only have 30 seconds to listen to you. And I think as Democrats, we have to just be really clear on what this will mean. Is you'll be able to see the doctor you need, and you're not going to go into debt because you have a medical bill. You know, your kid is going to be able to, you know, get the insulin they need. You know, your parent is not going to have, you know, a surprise bill pop up on them, but they're going to be able to see a doctor. Like, that's when I talking about in direct ways what our policy does, even though we're all, hey, I love policy. I'm a bit of a wonk, but like, people are busy, and we got to say the benefits for them to make them more supportive. And so when we ask what people are concerned about right now, this was very interesting. Now, if you saw some of my slides that I presented in Springfield, healthcare costs then were number one, and they're still very high. I mean, again, healthcare costs are always a challenge for Americans. Prescription drug costs are always a challenge for people. But what shot up in this poll is mortgage and rent concerns. And that was striking to me. When we polled in May at the beginning of the pandemic, groceries shot up. And so that was really interesting. And so you just wonder if, okay, so now people are seeing the payments looming on their house or on their apartment, and that fear is setting in. And so we are big believers in, as Democrats, we have to talk empathetically about the things people are worried about, so that, again, going back to my intro, that they know we get it. They know we're going to deliver change that helps them on the pain points, on the stress that they have. And so as we seek to make ourselves always as relevant and attuned as possible, I certainly think, speaking about these mortgage and rent fears and how, well, yeah, you know, Mitch McConnell just left DC and Republicans aren't doing anything about it. That's a big problem. We need change in that. And again, healthcare is always a really critical, as you all know, contrast point between us and Republicans, because they want to take away protections for pre-existing conditions. They want to roll back Medicaid. We want to expand Medicaid and expand Medicare, and we want to ultimately make sure you can see a doctor, you can get the care you need without, you know, going into bankruptcy. That's what we're all about. And so when we ask people, well, what has Trump done the best? They couldn't come up with much, so that's encouraging. He still gets his highest on handling the economy, you know, but 17% is, you know, it's not actually a lot of folks, but it's certainly important that we tie his inability to stop this virus to what has paralyzed our economy, and always tying COVID to the economy, because there are a lot of people who are more concerned about the economy than health and safety. Unfortunately, I'm more concerned about health and safety, but a lot of folks are concerned about, you know, their local business as well. Hey, it's the same cause for what's causing all these problems. Trump being a weak leader who's ineffective and unable to manage a response. And well, I'll come back to what he gets good or bad marks on in a second. But when we ask, you know, so what worries you? What economic situation? The number one continues to be getting sick and not being able to afford healthcare expenses. That's just such a lingering problem that we need to make more change on for Americans. We saw an increase here in losing my benefits and pension. And, you know, we really believe as Democrats that people work hard their whole life and they ought to have a decent retirement. And that's part of the promise of America. People have earned that, and that has to be protected. The increase in regular monthly expenses, an emergency expense. Our previous research has found 2/3 of people can't handle a $5,000 emergency expense. That's most people, and that's a lot of bills from hospitals. And then losing my job really rose a lot. So people are worried about losing their job, and that concerns us as Democrats, because as Democrats, we're about good paying jobs you can raise a family on, and losing the benefits and pensions. And as Democrats, we're about you know, folks that have worked hard their whole life being able to have a good retirement. And sorry, these two kind of were out of order back then, but now going back, we ask what Donald Trump did best. Here's what I prefer asking: what has he done worse? And look how high handling the COVID outbreak is at the top. So that is his major vulnerability. And, you know, Americans are assessing that he has not been an effective leader on this. And that's almost doubled the next thing. Fighting corruption, he, with good reason, has not done well at. And it's interesting, in the previous one, literally 0 people said he's improved healthcare costs, and 1% said protecting people with pre-existing conditions. So he has a big vulnerability on those issues. But it's like handling, you know, it used to be improving healthcare costs would be at the top of this, and people know he still hasn't done anything on it, but it's just COVID has overwhelmed us, overwhelmed our lives. And so that's where his biggest weakness is right now. And it's interesting that when you ask people, do you think if Joe Biden is elected, COVID will get better or worse? By pretty good numbers here in the Rust Belt, people said COVID will get better. So that's a big deal. And we want to make sure they're thinking about this question when they vote, given that, well, then that suggests they'll vote for us. So it's really important that we are thinking about how do we move forward and move past this moment. And I'll talk about messages later, but how do we really build back better, as he says. And so people believe he will improve the situation. So that's an issue we want voters thinking about. There's other issues that if they're thinking about, they might vote Republican. And we're always here to help talk about those, effective talking points on those issues. But, if they're thinking about COVID, which they should be thinking about because it's really messed up all of our lives. I can't go see my parents. Then they're going to vote for Joe Biden. And so we hope they will, so we can get a handle on this horrible pandemic. And then when we ask, well, do you prefer Democrats or Republicans to rebuild your local economy? I was quite heartened by this because often when people are asked, who do you prefer on the economy, they kind of default to Republicans. They think Republicans maybe are like better with markets or something. And as Rust Belt Rising, we're trying to change that. We want people to know, no, Democrats are better for the economy because the economy is your wages. The economy is your job, is a good paying job. Like what matters is the lived economy, how we experience the economy. What matters is our bills and our costs. And Democrats, that's what we are standing up for. But that's always, that's been kind of the thing we're working on is Rust Belt Rising. That's the thing our candidates are working on. Those things you all are working on. And so just the fact that we, by 1% in the Midwest, are preferred right now to rebuild the economy, I think is very encouraging, but we want to keep driving that up. And so we want people to know that as Democrats, we really care about the economy. Sometimes people think Democrats don't care about, jobs and growing local businesses, helping local businesses thrive, small businesses. No, that's what we're all about. That's what we're for. Republicans are for the big out-of-state corporations and Wall Street and the 1%. We're for the person who has a dream and is trying to open a business to help their family get ahead. And so we got to keep making sure people understand that difference. And when we ask, are you worried about losing income? Half of people are. And you also remember in these polls that you do have, a lot of retirees that may not have income right now. And so they're worried about COVID for other reasons. And then you have some Trump supporters who are just going to say, oh, well, everything is great. But I think it's a big deal if half of the people in our region worried about losing income because of a virus Trump was too ineffectual to focus on stopping and coordinate a response to. And this was interesting so when we did our poll in May, so we've done 3 polls during COVID. We did one in March, and people were really worried about the health and safety of it. And then we did one in May, and people were pretty impatient at that point about the lockdowns, about, just the measures that have been put in place to socially distance us. And they were like kind of clamoring for reopenings to a degree that was alarming to me. And now people are like, less people want more reopenings. And I think what happened is, one, some things have gotten to some extent back to normal, but more importantly, people realized they thought this thing was going to be over and it was going to go away. But Trump just didn't do anything on it. He did what he's just tweeting. And so I think a lot of people are like, ooh, I'm still really worried about my family's safety, our health. And so now that's kind of like pumping the brakes. And as you'll see in a second, they really appreciate the work that Governor Pritzker has done to balance health and safety and economy. And that's right here, that we ask people, because like I said, in May, they were a little like, come on, Governor Whitmer, come on, Tony Evers, like, we want to get, back to work. And now we ask them, can you think back to the spring and how do you feel about the response? And only less than a third of people say that state and local leaders did too much. Now, those folks are often loud. We hear them. They were the protesters in the Michigan State House. We all know, someone we, I don't know, went to high school with or whatever, who complains about Governor Pritzker on Facebook. But like, those probably aren't winnable voters for us. And that's only 27%. In almost any district, I think we could put together 50% plus one based on really almost 75% of people who think we are doing enough or we need to do more. And so even if you're in a district that was won by, 10% by Trump downstate somewhere, obviously it's harder, but I think people are confident in good leaders and we'll talk about that messaging in a minute, but leadership is really important. And people no longer think leaders did too much now that it's set in how serious this is. And so when we ask them, how would you rate how leaders have handled outbreak, then, you see only 31% say poor. And then you see, some excellence, a third say good, a third say fair. So I think, in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, people are like, all right, the leaders here, they're doing their best with it. But if you ask people about Trump, so what I did here is, this slide is not from the poll, but this is from our pollsters' daily tracking. So essentially the folks that did our poll, Civics, every 3 days is asking people in these same states a few questions. And this is a question they ask every few days. So in the same time we were doing our poll and people said, yeah, the state and local leaders, they're doing pretty well. Then they asked, so, how's the federal government doing? And you see in these states, half of the people say they are not satisfied at all with the US government's handling. So again, that gets back to what has become Trump's biggest vulnerability. And he has a lot of vulnerabilities, how he handled racial protests, how he protects the Great Lakes, how he protects our healthcare. There's a lot of vulnerabilities, but that's the biggest one. And again, this was interesting because when we asked in May what people's biggest priorities was, they were saying the local economic impact. And that's still really important. Again, I think if you're a county chair in an area that is, a little more moderate to conservative, like you do want to frame the actions we need to take about COVID in an economic way in terms of like, well, we want to make sure that, our businesses can stay open, and we want to make sure people feel safe going out and, going to work and going shopping. And so that's why, we may need to do, X, Y, Z. But even higher than that was in this poll, the health and safety impact. So again, a lot of people are really worried, whether it's the parent worried about sending their child to school, whether it's the elder who's worried about their nursing home facility. I mean, there are a lot of folks that are worried about health and safety. And so when we ask, so I'm sure all the conversations you have with people in your life, like schools is a big issue right now, and what the heck to do about these, awful situation Trump has put us in. And I was quite interested to learn here that less than a third want just fully in person, just like normal. Let's just go back, send all the kids back. And so that is very striking. And so a third want online, a third want a hybrid of online and in person, like maybe, one group of kids go for half the day, one kids go to the other. And this matters because I think what it says is that people will be willing to trust good leaders who will make the right judgment and balancing these factors of safety, health, and education and quality education. And so there's not one kind of right answer, and different communities are different, but we have to elect leaders who will listen and who will listen to health experts and make the right decisions. And so, but there were, some candidates in some more conservative areas that had thought, oh, I have to be for everyone going back to school. And like, we don't see that in our poll. That we see almost all Democrats are against normal in-person all-day schooling for all the kids. And most independents are. And then even some Republicans are worried too. So I think, again, relative to the voters, we might actually win. I think they're really concerned and support some kind of hybrid right now or just online school. Because look, 45% of people say it's extremely risky to send kids to school. 19% say it's somewhat risky. And then again, you have that same third, and that's that Trump base who's saying, no, it's not risky at all. Everything's fine. Corona's in the past. And so again, I just don't know how winnable those voters are. But I still maintain we can win we can flip a heck of a lot more districts with just making sure all of our people that agree with us can vote and winning over some of those independents and moderate Republicans that are worried about, COVID and the kids going to school. More than half were not concerned about losing income, but again, a lot of people don't have kids or kids in school right now. But when you have a third concerned about losing income, that's a lot of people in your county. That's a lot of people that that's a big deal. If there were, do I need to be at home with my kids as they do online learning? Can I go to work? Single parents, two-income households. This is a tough struggle we have to speak to people. And again, we have to get a handle on this virus so that we can move forward as a country and get back to the things that that we all love. And then we ask about how people see the criminal justice system, and obviously this is important now with there's a lot of protests going on. We see reminders just this week in the tragic shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and we get reminders so often of how Black Lives Matter. And but I think sometimes Democrats have fear that, oh, I can't talk about that. I don't know how some white voters will receive that. And I think this is a heartening finding that 3/4 of Midwesterners do not believe the justice system treats everyone equally. And 59% believe we need changes in policing and criminal justice. So that is a majority. That's all the voters we need. And so look, what that change is may be different in different communities in terms of what people will support. What one activist might say here might not, be what voters over here might want. But there are ideas that we can all support, I think, whether that's, just changing how police work with communities and changing how we recruit and supervise and train, or having more, first responders, medical folks and social workers, responding to mental health situations and substance abuse situations. And, there are lots of solutions, but I think it is really important as Democrats, and when we talk about the things we stand for, I think people are with us when we talk about that we want in America to live up to our ideals, that everyone will be treated equally, and that's not the reality for everyone right now. And we need change, and we need change to make that happen. And I think if we don't say that, then there are those who are part of our coalition who would not feel like we have their back. And so this is really important politically, but more importantly, it's more important morally, because Jacob Blake should be walking around with his children right now in Kenosha. And so anyway, so I think that's a key thing. And the last thing I want to say about that is one way that's very effective to talk about this issue to a moderate Republican and independent, someone you're worried about, I could lose them on this issue, is it's just the simple sense that no matter our background, no matter who we are, we all want our loved ones to make it home at the end of the day. And so we need to come together for change to make that happen. And we need leaders who will really bring people together. Trump has used racial division for his own political gain and to enrich his crony 1% friends. We want to bring people together for solutions that will realize the promise and the ideals of America. And so I think that is one way to talk about this, that I think any Democrat should really feel confident and comfortable and believe in doing, because that's our values. And so from our previous polls in the spring, people don't see the economy as having improved. These are the marks they give it in their area. What we used to see is last year, people said, oh, I think the national economy is doing really good. I see the stock market, Trump's bragging about the stock market. Around here, it's like so-so. Now, they're like, whoa, the national economy is really bad. Around here, it's mostly about the same. So the point is, as Democrats, we want to rebuild the economy so it's good locally. Like, we want people saying excellent. We want people saying good. We're not focused on the stock market. We're focused on people having jobs you can raise a family on. And so when you see this personal economic situation, it's the same kind of thing. People are like, I'm getting by, but it hasn't improved. So they're not getting ahead. And what we believe in as Democrats is people being able to get ahead in America. We believe in having rules that are fair so the system's not rigged and people are able to get to their dreams. And this is what I talk about when I say, but when you ask people about the national economy, they say it's really bad right now. A lot of very bads. And I think more to the point that it's getting worse. And so that's why I think just the sense of change is really important right now for us to talk about. It's not working. We need change. So what are some ways to talk about what I just went through with you? So one thing with Rust Belt Rising is at the end, I will drop our sign up that it's free. Everything we do is free. And if you sign up, I will give you access to our site for candidates and campaigns, because you all, as county chairs, work with a lot of candidates and campaigns. And we have talking points on kind of every issue, on how to talk about healthcare, how to talk about the economy, how to talk about immigration, how to talk about abortion, how to talk about guns, how to talk about environment and education. And every time we do a poll, we put out new messages from our Midwest messaging committee that kind of takes what we saw and then puts them into words for you. And we have candidates that say, oh, I just, did a radio interview. I just brought your talking points with me. And we just want to give you a kind of a plain spoken, direct way to talk about these things. And so we want you to utilize them, just plug them into, a Facebook post or, something, if you like something we said, integrate into what you're saying. I mean, give it to candidates, just use it however you want. The work we do with candidates, we help candidates tell their authentic story and tell their vision for their community. So of course, it's not, the stuff isn't all about talking points. It's about authentic leaders. And so we do that work with anyone running for office for free. But we also want to give you stuff that, again, you see something you like, use it. And so here's the key difference between us and Republicans. They want to go back to how it was a few months ago. So the stock market's working for the 1%, and people have to risk their health to go back to work. We want to build our economy to be better. We have a choice. We have an opportunity as a country. And this is intended to reinforce, what I think the Biden campaign has settled on is a smart message. But we want to rebuild our country to serve working families better than it ever did before. And so that's the key difference, that we have to put forward a vision for something better than we had. That's the difference between us and Republicans. We want working families to actually be able to get ahead. We want our essential workers to be treated like they're essential and paid like they're essential finally. And so we need change. And if we want working families to get ahead, we need to rebuild our economy in a way that benefits them. And so again, that's kind of the key difference. And one way you could talk about this that we've been kind of pushing is, so we did a bunch of focus groups in the Midwest, and we did find this interesting sense where a lot of people, there's a real stubbornness. They're they don't want the idea of governments giving them something. They're just I can achieve the goals I have for my family, but I need things to be fair. and I need the rules not to be rigged, and then just give us the reasonable things we need, make sure that we have healthcare, but like I don't need you to like give me something. I just need you to kind of like get out of the way and let me do this. And so the message we crafted here is that people want to make a plan. They want to be able to start a business. They need to be able to pay their mortgage and rent. But the thing people feel right now is everything is out of control. So let's get you back in control of your life. And who's caused the chaos? Donald Trump. And he's made it worse. And you don't know what your future looks like because he can't stop this pandemic, because he strokes division that causes white militiamen to go to one from Illinois to go to Wisconsin yesterday and shoot someone. He is causing this chaos. You can get ahead if things are just clear, and we're going to get you back in control of your life. And so that's, I think, a way in our region to talk about some of these things. And then leadership really matters. So I think we want to talk about how we want leaders who are caring, responsible, with character, who bring us together, who are steady, have good judgment, thoughtful leadership. All of this, as we're seeing such a bad leader as president, well, he's not even a leader, but the person in that office, I think it is making people hungry for good leadership locally. And again, if you're in a place in downstate or Western Illinois that's been really tough for Democrats, the best bet our candidates have is to just be trusted. And again, that comes through them telling their authentic story and talking about values that resonate in their community, talking about how much they love their community and why we got to do the things that we're going to do because we love this place, because this place is worth fighting for. So these are the things we got to do to help it thrive. But I think being able to talk about leaders who bring people together is really a key strategy for us in places that are tougher. And it's just important. We need good leaders. And that matters in how we talk about the schools issue, because there aren't perfect solutions right now, but we need leaders who can make the best judgment on safety and education, to be responsible, safe, and still quality education. Because I think, again, if people trust the person making the decision, then they know they're going to make the right decision for their family. Like I talked about, that that we stand for equality. We know people aren't treated the same, so we need change, so they will be. And we need to, and here's where we draw on our values. So hey, around here we look out for neighbors no matter what their background is. We stand up for people no matter what their faith. We care about people. We take care of one another around here. That's how we talk through our values, but that explain then why we might be for a criminal justice reform policy. But as Democrats, what are we for? Yeah, we're for people not being one healthcare bill away from debt. Republicans are doing nothing on that, or a lost job from knocking you off your feet, because we're for creating good jobs. As Democrats, and we believe in things like people's dignity and compassion, the dignity of work. These are things that are central to us and our values. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, if someone said to me, well, Paul, but how do we explain what we're for as Democrats? Because we are a big ideological tent, and some of us are more progressive, some of us are more moderate. They're different Democrats. But what's any Democrat for? I think we're making sure people can get the health care they need, can see a doctor and get the treatment they need, and the prescription drugs they need. We're for good jobs you can raise a family on. We're for clean water. We're for quality education. We're for equality. We're for a decent retirement. And I think those, and there are other issues too, of course. But I'm just saying that those are some ways that I think we can really put our foot forward in a way that, again, anyone who might be winnable could be won over. They agree with us on all those things. We see, on 98% of people want to get prescription drug costs down, but do they know Republicans are keeping us from being able to do that? 85% of people want to get healthcare costs down, but do they know, Democrats, the ones who have real plans to do that, who want to to use every lever we can at every level of government. You know, have a plan to make sure you can get the care you need. Everyone supports clean water, like literally just about everyone. That is not a partisan issue, and so that is a great way to be able to talk about the environment and get into the things that, you know, we care about so much, like climate change. But when we begin with safe, clean drinking water, protecting the lakes where we live, work, and play, being able to, our farmers, you know, have clean water to grow the food that we eat, that is where you can get anyone supportive of environmental you know, policies you have, if you start right there. And with healthcare, and I talked about this in Springfield, you know, talking about not going straight into the slogans and the policy jargon and the process, starting with your story, starting with a healthcare story, how it's affecting you, what you're struggling with, and then what our policy will enable you to do. And what do I mean by that? That you're able to go see a doctor and you're not worried at night at the kitchen table about the bill you just got. You can enjoy time with your family without worrying about how you're gonna get this treatment for a kid. That's how you talk about healthcare in an effective way. Education, that we talk about quality schools, that people are proud of their local school, but they want to make sure that school has the resources so it can thrive. They want to make sure it has skills and training programs. So if some people like working with their hands, if they'd rather be outside and rather than behind a desk, if they don't want college yet, then there's a path that they know is respected and is available to them, so that people can find, everyone should be able to find an affordable path to the career they want, whether that is, you know, college and different kinds of higher ed, or certification programs. That's how we talk about education. And like I said, with the economy, we talk about wages, we talk about good jobs. I should go ahead and pause for questions. There's other slides I have, but I've talked for long enough than anyone should have to listen to. But I'll just leave you with this one, that the race is still close in our region. And so with those 4 states, we found we're only at about 4%. And so I think, obviously you're focused on, you know, great candidates running in your area, and we want to pass the fair tax in Illinois. And so we're focused on Illinois, but to the extent you're thinking about and helping and finding time to do things with our electorally key neighbors, you know, whatever national polls you might see, you know, it's still pretty close in our region. And if it gets closer in the national polls, then it's going to be a toss-up in our region. And so one thing Rust Belt Rising is doing about that is we have a virtual voter registration program, where we are calling and texting 100,000 Michigan and Wisconsin unregistered targets, those that we believe share our values but are not registered to vote at their current address. And we're calling and texting them to get registered to vote. So if that's a volunteer opportunity you're interested, I'll also put that in the chat. But I'm a big believer at this point that I think people are largely with us on the issues. We need to make sure they know how to vote. And so that's why we're doing that effort. And we're also sending a voter registration form with a mailer of what to do about it to all those Wisconsin, Michigan targets that with our partners we identified, but we're calling them and texting them about it. But here's the thing, folks. I mean, people are just confused right now about how to vote. And so that's why it is really important to do this outreach and to share things on Facebook. I can talk more about what I think is most effective with those kinds of posts. But people need to know that there are options right now. And so people can find the safe option for them. And some people, it's requesting that absentee ballot as soon as you can. And maybe it's safe for you to then mail it back. But maybe you feel more comfortable dropping off that absentee ballot at the clerk's office. And many of them have drop boxes outside. Many people, it's going to be voting in person early. That's how I'm going to vote at my quiet local library, because I'll have my mask on and I'll be 6 feet apart. And that's how I'm planning to vote. And then obviously last resort is election day. But we got to get people registered so they have all those options, so they could request the absentee as early as possible, so we don't have to worry about this USPS stuff, and they can ideally drop it off. But we got to make sure people know how to vote, and know it's simple and it's quick and it's easy, and we don't want them losing faith in the system. Like, they're going to be able to vote, but we really got to put out there that we're there to help them through it. We're there to answer their questions, and most importantly, we're there to help them make a plan and choose the options right for them, so then they're confident to go do it. And that's something that we know works really well. So I think that's where we're at as a region. But I could learn more from all of you than you could from me. So let's have a conversation.
Thank you, Paul. And I just want to remind folks that if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box now, and we'll get through as many as we can. Also, if you missed any part of this presentation or want to go back and review it, we did record the presentation, and if the technology works, we'll have that up tomorrow afternoon and available for all of you to see and go back and review. I think we have several, as well as county chairs, we have several local candidates, local county candidates, as well as many potential municipal candidates. The municipal elections are just around the corner, even though we don't want to think about that just yet. Do you have any advice for them in particular about how to take these talking points and these poll results and tailor them for their area, especially if they're running in a very red Trump supporting district?
Yeah. First off, so I just dropped in the chat the sign up. So again, it's free. If you just want to be in the loop for the Zooms that we do, for our polls, for our messages, and get access to all the previous ones, just make sure to sign up there, and then you got access to everything. Then you're a rising leader in our region and part of this network of change makers. And then I'm going to drop the talking points, the new talking points for folks, and then I will drop the poll if you want to look at like you can look at like independents and Democrats, Republicans, and different things like that. So what is my advice for how to do that? So I think in this time where we can't safely go door to door, it's really important to do the same organizing you all do every year, but just think about it digitally. And what I mean by that is, okay, well, usually like this person turns out that block. Okay, how do I ask him to make calls to get the folks on that block out, or the folks that all go to their kids' schools? How do I get someone who's respected in the community to post on Facebook about me? How do I create like a private message group of the people that do like me, where every time I make a post, I send them that link and I'm like, can you share this? But we know it's really important to be doing digital ads, but also Facebook likes nothing more than what comes from someone. And then the people seeing it trust it, because it's like, oh, well, my buddy from high school said that. Okay, so then I guess Seth's all right because he said I should vote for Seth. So I just think that kind of like relational organizing of kind of mapping out. I mean, obviously, it's just important to virtually phone bank right now and to make calls, that's how you're reaching voters. That's how you're fundraising. But also, if you do have the money to do a text program, I really think ones like Hustle and Spoke, the peer-to-peer texting is really effective. Like in 4 hours in the last 2 days, only in 4 hours, we made 30,000 texts to Michigan voters, and we're getting a reply on 1/10 of them. And that's like more engagement than we get from a phone bank, where we sometimes get only 5%. So if you have the money to do it, like texting is really key. But kind of going back to kind of the essence of the question, I mean, where it starts for any candidate is their story. And we're working with some great Illinois candidates that tell their story, like Mitchell Esslinger, down in Strasburg, or Brandon Adams in Jacksonville, Seth Wiggins, Jim Malone, and it's something that Lauren Underwood did so well, and others that have flipped districts. And so, you have to be able to really work on telling your story in a way that starts with something that illustrates kind of what you are like as a leader. Like, don't tell me your values. Don't tell me what you're like as a leader. Show me. Tell me a story about it. You know, what I got, you know, as a group, we, you know, I don't know, my sister is having this challenge with these insurance companies that she can't get the help, that she has a heart condition, she can't get the treatment that she needs. And then, you know, so that you start with your story, and then that moves into the story of the community. So, and I know a lot of people are struggling like this right now. And then it moves into now and the story of like, but if we take action, if we do this thing like voting, then we are able to make this change. And then, and really having a vision for your community. And what I mean by that is I don't think Republicans have any kind of entrepreneurial sense of like what it will take for their local area to thrive. And I think our candidates, I think you do have a sense. It'll take, you know, we have this local asset and we can really build on that. And, you know, if we get some of these things downtown and if we, you know, get this community college working with, you know, this industry, then we could train more people for this, we could grow this. And so that's what I mean about you know, and talking about what are the good jobs that can be created there? What can we build on for families? And so I think having that, being able to paint a visual picture for people, and again, it's always, visuals matter a lot. When you're telling stories, you know, your stories have good, real characters, should have the real villains, you know, who's caused disinvestment in your community? Was it that business that left? You know, like naming these things, but then helping people picture what it could be like. And again, that's what I mean about Democrats. We often just say like, oh, I'm for this policy, and you just list that policy name. And does every voter know what that is? But we're saying you're, and so this is a good question for Mike. So how do we explain that Biden and Harris are not socialists? Yeah, so I think we want to explain like what the community under Biden and Harris could be like. And what would that be like? Oh, well, you know, you're able to see a doctor, get your prescription drugs, and you know, get the treatment you need. And you know, that's not, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't know what that is, but that's just like what people want. And like, so like, that's the thing we're going to deliver. And and so those in Springfield heard me talk about this, but one of the most key values we find that resonates in our region is hard work. People really believe in hard work. And so as Democrats, it's important for us to talk about, you know, people are working so hard, and so they deserve to have health care they can rely on, they feel good about. They deserve to have a decent retirement and have Social Security protected and having, you know, the pre-existing conditions protected. That's what we're for as Democrats. And so I think, you know, finding a value that, you know, someone that might say that about their socialist, like, I bet hard work is something that matters a lot to that person. And so I think then the way you'd say it is, you know, well, so Joe Biden, you know, had to move in with his grandparent because his dad was struggling to find a job. And so he has always stayed caring about working people. And he is someone who, you know, helped expand healthcare to get it to more people and protect pre-existing conditions and create a lot of jobs in the Recovery Act. But now what we want to do is create a lot more good jobs and help businesses, you know, local businesses be able to thrive and grow. Whereas, you know, Trump is just caring about, you know, his Wall Street friends. And so I just think we want to focus on what are the things that working people are really clamoring for, asking for, struggling with, you know, affordable education for their kids, childcare. We want to make sure families have the things they need to achieve their dreams, to get ahead, to make a plan, to be in control of their lives. And look, you're not going to win over everyone. There are some that, you know, Fox and Trump have just, you know, just too deep in their brain right now. But I believe there are persuadable. And one thing that really comes across in the poll is the extreme gender divides we have right now, where a lot of men and white men and white people who have not gone to college, you know, largely with Trump. And then you have women and white people that have gone to college and people of color supporting Biden. And so, you know, as you're prioritizing your time for who you're reaching out to, I do think it's important to like really have in your model, like, reach out to as many women as possible, because in Trump's America, it's just like a real divide between, I don't know, women having a lot more sense and like, this guy's terrible, and unfortunately too many of us white men haven't come to that realization yet. But I think focusing on, remember, to persuade someone, you need to understand what the values they have are, and then explain our policies through their values. So that's, that might be hard work. That might be, veterans in your area. That might be, American history and civil rights movement, the things we fought for as a country, and then thus why we must do X, Y, Z. If you're talking about rural voters, it's important to really affirm the rural way of life and say, yeah, we got to protect the rural way. I love the rural. I love, the X, Y, and Z about our community. And so that's why we need to make sure we have healthcare. What's the biggest problem for farmers right now? Healthcare. Why do family farms go bankrupt most often? Medical bankruptcies. They work their whole life. They've used their hands. We say, oh, I got to have an agriculture policy. Well, that's important to know, but like, you're better served talking about healthcare with them first, but knowing your stuff on the agriculture. So I think, again, there is widespread support for people having access to their prescription drugs and a doctor and the treatment they need. People are with us on those issues. Let's talk about those issues, and let's help them understand that an economic recovery is about it being better than it was before, and it's about it's about America taking care of the people that work so hard. Like, that's what an economic recovery has to be. And so I think that's what Build Back Better is about, to really have a better vision for what we can achieve together.
Great. Well, we are unfortunately just about out of time for tonight's training. I encourage all of you attending tonight to click on those links that Paul put in the chat and sign up in order to get information from Rust Belt Rising. I'm going to put my email in the chat as well. If anybody has any follow-up questions, feel free to send those our way. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight, Paul. We appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. And thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thanks for having me. Oh, and I see Brandon Adams. Good to see you, buddy. Keep up the great work, my friend. Thank you all.
Thank you. We'll see y'all next time.
All right.